Shalom חברים, today Parashat Emor, and we're going to do this together with Kohelet, the philosopher Ecclesiastes, and the poet Yehuda Amichai. So let's begin. Rabbi Shimon said, "Come and see how dear a mitzvah performed in its proper time." This is from Masechet Psachim. Rabbi Shimon אמר, בוא תראה כמה חביבה מצווה בשעתה. All right, so what Rabbi Shimon here meant to say, that a mitzvah must be fulfilled in its proper time, or in its set time. Specifically in this Talmudic debate, it's about what happens when there was an instruction on the 14th day of Passover, of the month of Nisan, to sacrifice the Paschal lamb. And what would happen if that 14th day falls on Shabbat? Do we burn the lamb on Shabbat, which of course we should not, or do we do it because it is the 14th day? And that debate kind of concludes with we should probably burn it even if it is Shabbat because of Chaviva mitzvah b'she'ata, because how dear is a mitzvah that is fulfilled in its proper time. Now, how does this connect to our portion Emor? In Emor, it is said, this is the exact mitzvah, בחודש הראשון, ב-14 לחודש, בין הארבעים, פסח לאדוני. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, there shall be Passover offering to Adonai. So you see, it's really, really specific. The time is very specific. It's the first month, in this case, the month of Nisan, on the 14th day at twilight. So we are given a specific time. And in this portion, the portion of Emor, there are other holidays that are specified with their exact times. And in fact, there is a verse preceding the one that we just read that says, אלה מועדי אדוני, מקראי קודש אשר תקראו אותם במועדם. What does it mean? These are the set times of Adonai, the sacred occasions which you shall celebrate, each at its appointed time. So as you can see, the timing here. Timing is very, very important. Now, ever since the destruction of our second temple, our tradition is rooted in time rather than in space. So basically, what keeps us together is no longer a temple, but it is our calendar. And the fact that Jewish people all over the world acknowledge certain days together at a given time. And this is what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, which we talked about last week, was calling sanctuaries in time. And so our sages definitely encourages us following this Torah portion to fulfill our mitzvahs in proper times. Now we're going to get to the philosopher, Kohelet. By the way, this is here is my Cassuto. Cassuto, that's an Italian kind of a 20th century commentator, and his commentary is actually mandatory curriculum in public schools in Israel, and this is actually my own from middle school, I think, so I'm going to read to you from it. So this is very, very famous passage from Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes. לכל זמן ועת, לכל חפץ תחת השמיים, עת ללדת ועת למות, עת לטעת ועת לעקור נטוע, עת להרוג ועת לרפוא, עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות, עת לבכות ועת לשחוק, עת ספוד ועת רקוד, עת להשליך אבנים ועת כנוס אבנים, עת לחבוק ועת לרחוק מחבק, עת לבקש ועת לאבד, עת לשמור ועת להשליך, עת לקרוע ועת לתפור, עת לחשות ועת לדבר, עת לאהוב ועת לשנוא, עת מלחמה ועת שלום. Beautiful philosophy, poetry, and it translates to a time to give birth and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. So if we try to understand the pshat, the surface level of this, there should be a set time for anything, right? We should not mix. We should really give time and proper time to each occurrence in life. Kasuto here actually has a different interpretation, which is really interesting. What Kasuto is saying is, אלוהים הוא השולט בעולם, אין ביד האדם לשנות מה שגזר אלוהים, כי לכל דבר זמנו הקבוע. So what Kasuto is saying here is that there's actually a set time for everything because that set time was predetermined. This is very interesting. We have no control over it. Those times of joy and sorrow were times that were predetermined, that were already set for us. But now we have a complete opposite approach coming from the poet Yehuda Amichai. And as opposed to Ecclesiastes, he wrote this poem that is called A Man Doesn't Have Time in His Life. And it goes like this. A man doesn't have time in his life to have time for everything. He doesn't have seasons enough to have a season for every purpose. Ecclesiastes was wrong about that. A man needs to love and to hate at the same moment, to laugh and cry with the same eyes, with the same hands to throw stones and to gather them, to make love in war and war in love, and to hate and forgive and remember and forget, to arrange and confuse, to eat and to digest what history takes years and years to do. A man doesn't have time. When he loses, he seeks. When he finds, he forgets. When he forgets, he loves. When he loves, he begins to forget. And his soul is seasoned, his soul is very professional. Only his body remains forever an amateur. It tries and it misses, gets muddled, doesn't learn a thing, drunk and blind in its pleasures and its pains. He will die as figs die in autumn, shriveled and full of himself and sweet. The leaves growing dry on the ground, the bare branches pointing to a place where there's time for everything. So this is Yehuda Amichai. And as you can see, here is a poetic debate between Kohelet, between Ecclesiastes and Amichai. Do we have set times for everything, or do we have time for everything? And I must say that in this poetic debate, I'm personally a little bit more with Amichai. I'm a little bit more with the letter. And yes, we Jewish people, we are time travelers. And we anchor our tradition in time. And our time takes us back to the past that we rely on. And we rely on our past to look on to the future. And it reminding us of the unity and of our eternity. So yes, we are time travelers. But at each stop in this travel, we realize that what we acknowledge is not exclusive. We always mix simcha ve'etzev. We always mix sorrow and joy. When we break a glass in the wedding, we remember the destruction of the Holy Temple. When we are the happiest, we remember our deepest mourning. And whenever we acknowledge a victory, we always pray for peace. Our tradition is rooted also in those contradictions of mixing times together. And perhaps this is a good reminder that there is another way to get through our very turbulent times right now, and that to know that inside our sorrow and fear and confusion and our anger, there is a promise and there's hope and there is a calling. And these are not separate ideas, but rather they're all a part of the same oneness, which we all spend our lives attempting to connect to. Shabbat Shalom.